Welcome to Hidden Ties, where every story hides a deeper truth. I still can't believe it. There I was, all set to help my sister with her wedding plans, and she tells me I'm too country to be at the guest list review. Right in front of everyone? Well, I wasn't having it. So, I did what I had to do, and the whole place went dark. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. My name's Carol, and I'm 52 years old, living in a small town just outside of Nashville. I run a little antique store down on Main Street. Most days, I'm surrounded by old things, rusty tools, mismatched china, vintage furniture. I always tell my customers that I'm good at giving things a second chance, and I suppose it's because of the way I grew up. I was the second child in a big family, the quiet one. The one who got along with everyone but never really felt like I fit in. Maybe that's why my relationship with my sister Amanda has always been a bit complicated. Amanda's the older one. She's 55 and, well, she's always been the glamorous one. The one who knew what was in, who got all the attention, and who never let you forget it. While I spent my childhood with my boots in the dirt, Amanda was out there in her city slicker clothes, trying to make sure everyone knew how polished and perfect her life was. As adults, not much changed. She was in charge, and I was happy to let her think she was. But when it came time for her to plan her wedding, she made it clear she was calling all the shots. So, when Amanda asked me to come along to her guest list review, I thought it would be a way for us to bond. We had a little tension between us, sure, but I was hoping this would be an opportunity to get closer. I wanted to help, be a part of it, and, if I'm honest, I wanted to feel included in something that mattered to her. The venue was one of those fancy places, the kind where the chandeliers are so shiny you can see your reflection in them. It had big white walls and these long tables set up in neat rows. The air smelled like fresh flowers and overpriced perfume, which is funny because I couldn't smell a hint of the country. But that was my life. Country. Rustic. Simple. Nothing like the polished world Amanda lived in. I was always okay with that, until she opened her mouth. Okay, let's get this started, Amanda said, clicking her pen and looking at the guest list in front of her. So, Carol, I've already narrowed it down, but I need your opinion on a few things. I nodded, sitting down across from her, eager to help. But my enthusiasm was short-lived. I'm thinking, Carol, Amanda continued, scanning her list. I need to keep this thing classy. You know, a bit of elegance. And I don't think you quite fit the vibe I'm going for. You're, well, a little too country for this wedding. I felt the air freeze for a moment. What do you mean? I asked, trying to make sense of her words. You know, your accent, the boots, all that, Amanda replied, barely looking up. It just doesn't match the theme. I blinked, trying to swallow down the lump that formed in my throat. She was telling me, right there in front of everyone, that I didn't belong. Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice catching. It's just a wedding, Carol, she shrugged. It's important for the atmosphere to be perfect. I felt my stomach tighten. Was this really happening? My sister, the one person I thought would understand me, was saying I wasn't good enough to be at her wedding because of who I was? Sorry, Carol, but I don't think you should be there. It's not personal, it's just how things are. I wanted to scream, but instead I just sat there, staring at her, trying to hold it together. I see, I muttered, standing up. I didn't care if she noticed the tears that welled up in my eyes. You'll regret this. Amanda didn't look up. She was already moving on to the next guest on the list. I left the meeting with my sister feeling like I'd been sucker punched. For hours, I walked around the town with no real destination, letting the cool spring air slap me across the face, trying to breathe through the sting. I wasn't mad. I was hurt. I never expected Amanda to shut me out like that. And just like that, she'd taken away any ounce of power I had in our relationship. The thing is, though, I've never been the type to let people walk all over me for long. In a way, I think it's the years spent working with antiques that taught me how to see the value in things others might overlook. So, as I walked, I began to form a plan. It wasn't something I decided on in an instant, But as the ideas started coming to me, I could feel the cold knot in my stomach unraveling. If Amanda wasn't going to let me be a part of her day, then maybe I'd show her just how much she needed me after all. I spent the next few days mulling over every little detail of her wedding, every decision she'd made, every little thing that could go wrong. I made a list of everything I knew about her wedding plans, the venue, the caterers, the tech team, even her photographer, who'd gotten a little too friendly with some of the guests during a previous event. I'd been to enough of those fancy affairs to know what went on behind the curtain. People in high society had secrets, lots of them. I'd been doing a little research, calling in favors, checking up on things that Amanda thought were out of reach. I wasn't the only one with connections, after all. But then came the real kicker, the venue. I wasn't planning to go all out, at least not yet, but I knew one thing, the tech. I'd been in that world before, worked in events and production when I was younger. The power of turning something on, or off, was more than enough to get my point across. The right flip of a switch could change the entire tone of a night. And as I sat there, sipping coffee in my kitchen, a plan came into focus. Amanda's perfect, glittering wedding was about to hit a huge snag. That weekend, I met with my old friend Carla, who worked in event production. I'd known her for years, and when I called her, she didn't hesitate for a second. "What's going on, Carol? You sound like you've got something cooking." "I need a favor," I said, my heart racing with excitement. "I need you to take a look at the venue's electrical setup. Something simple, but enough to make a statement." "Anything specific you're thinking?" Carla asked, her voice now serious. "Just make sure that when I pull the plug, it's not just the lights that go, the whole venue, just blackout, right when things are at their peak. I want the crowd to feel it." Carla laughed, though I could hear the hesitation. "You're not messing around, are you?" "No," I said, my voice low. "Not this time." I wasn't sure if I'd go through with it, but I couldn't deny the thrill of taking control back. Amanda had underestimated me. She thought I was just some country bumpkin who couldn't understand her fancy world. But I knew how to get my revenge. Subtle, quiet, but devastatingly effective. On the day of the wedding, everything seemed to go according to plan. Amanda had me on the sidelines, as usual, but I didn't mind anymore. It gave me the distance I needed to watch her fumble through her perfect little world, so wrapped up in her image that she barely noticed the cracks forming beneath her feet. I didn't care about her venue anymore, or the guests who seemed to fawn over her every word. What mattered now was showing her what it felt like to be left out, just like she'd done to me. Carla sent me a text that afternoon. "All set. I'll be ready at your signal." The wedding was in full swing. Guests were mingling, the band was playing, and the servers were making their rounds with champagne. Amanda had her perfect smile plastered on, waving to the crowd like she was royalty. But I wasn't watching her anymore. I was watching the clock. It was right after dinner, just as the band was about to kick into the first dance, that I made my move. I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit send. Less than a minute later, the lights flickered. No one noticed at first. But then they flickered again, longer this time. And then the whole room went dark. There was an eerie silence for a moment. Then came the murmurs, confusion, gasps, the shuffle of guests unsure of what was happening. I stood up slowly, walking toward the back of the room. A server bumped into me, apologizing. I just smiled, knowing what was about to happen. And then, boom, complete darkness. The guests started panicking, calling out to each other. Some of the lights flickered back on briefly, only to turn off again, heightening the chaos. People were stumbling in the dark, trying to figure out if it was some sort of technical glitch or if something else was happening. Meanwhile, I could hear Amanda's voice, shrill and frantic. "What is going on?" she yelled. "Why is the power out?" I stood there, watching the scene unfold with a sense of satisfaction. She'd thought she could push me aside, make me feel small. But the truth was, she couldn't control everything, not even her own perfect wedding. The darkness stretched on longer than I expected, and that wasn't the plan. People were starting to panic, asking each other what was going on, stumbling around in the dark, trying to find their way. I had to admit I'd never seen Amanda so rattled. It felt like everything was slipping out of her perfectly manicured hands, and I was standing at the center of it, watching it unravel. I stood by the back door, watching through a small gap in the curtains, my heart thudding in my chest, but for a different reason now. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about making a point. I wasn't going to sit quietly anymore. I wasn't the country bumpkin she thought I was. No, I was someone who could take a situation and turn it into something she'd never forget. Carla had done her job well. The backup generators kicked in, but only half of the venue's systems were working. The lights came back on, but they were dim and flickering, like an old movie projector struggling to show the film. The music system was down too, so instead of the slow, romantic first dance Amanda had envisioned, there was nothing but the murmur of guests' voices echoing around the room. And in that stillness, Amanda's panic cut through the crowd. "Who did this?" she screamed. She was clutching the microphone now, her voice shrill, but there was no one to calm her down. No one who could fix this. She looked around, her eyes wide, her face flushed, and for the first time in my life, I saw something close to fear in her expression. "I can't believe this. No, no, no," she muttered under her breath. "This is ruined. It's all ruined." I stood still, trying to stifle the small part of me that felt bad. But when she made eye contact with me from across the room, I couldn't help but smile, just a little. I had her attention now. I took a step forward. At that exact moment, the overhead lights flickered back on, just enough for the guests to see each other's faces, but not enough to feel comfortable again. People started whispering, wondering if the wedding was going to continue. One of the servers came up to Amanda, trying to comfort her, but she brushed him off with a harsh wave. Her world was falling apart, and she couldn't handle it. Not with all these eyes on her, not with the way she had built this perfect event in her head. "Everything's fine," I heard Amanda say through clenched teeth. "It's just a small glitch. We'll fix it." But the more she tried to pretend it was under control, the more out of place she seemed. It wasn't just the lights, it was the entire atmosphere, the chaos in the air, the sudden, unexpected failure of the thing she thought she had total control over. The pressure was getting to her, and everyone could feel it. Her facade of composure was slipping. I walked toward the center of the room, keeping my head down, letting the moment stretch on. Amanda noticed me again, this time more intently, and for a brief second, I saw that spark of realization in her eyes. She knew. "Carol," Amanda's voice cracked, and she hurried toward me. I watched her struggle to keep the mask up. "This is bad. You have to fix it." For a moment, I could have let her have this. I could have gone up to the tech team and acted like everything was fine. I could have played the part of the good sister, stepping in to make it all okay. But then I remembered that moment in the guest list review, the way she dismissed me like I was nothing. She had made me feel like I wasn't important enough for her perfect day, and I wasn't about to let her off the hook just because things weren't going the way she planned. I shook my head. "No, Amanda, I'm not going to fix it." "What do you mean?" She was getting frantic now, looking around as if she could find someone, anyone, who could help her. "You don't get it, do you?" I asked, keeping my voice low, just for her. "You didn't think I was good enough for your wedding. You thought I was too country, too simple, too much of a mess. So I figured I'd show you what happens when you don't value the people who are trying to help you." Her face went white as the realization hit her. The room was still buzzing with confusion, but for a second it felt like the world had frozen around us. She stood there, mouth open, trying to form words, but nothing came out. "You can't do this," she said finally, her voice trembling. "Already did," I replied, and the words tasted like sweet, bitter justice. The next few moments were a blur. Someone from the event staff came up to Amanda, trying to calm her down, while I just stood there, watching the unraveling. The guests started murmuring, a few even left, thinking the wedding was over. I didn't need to stay. I didn't need to say anything else. The chaos had spoken for itself. I turned to walk away, heading for the exit, feeling lighter with each step. But as I reached the door, I heard a voice behind me. "Carol, wait." It was Amanda. She caught up to me, still frantic, still trying to salvage something, anything from the disaster. "Please, you have to help me. Everything's falling apart." I stopped in my tracks but didn't turn around. Instead, I just stood there, feeling the weight of the moment. I had finally stood up for myself. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. "Maybe next time, you'll think twice before treating me like I don't matter," I said softly, almost to myself. I didn't look back as I stepped out into the cool night air. I didn't know what I expected after I walked out of the wedding venue that night. Part of me thought Amanda might chase after me, beg me to come back, apologize for everything. The other part of me, honestly, the bigger part, didn't care. I had made my point, and the world could go on without me being the one to smooth things over. Amanda had been the one to push me away, and now she was feeling the weight of her decision. As I made my way down the dark street, the cool night air seemed to take some of the tension from my chest. For the first time in days, I could breathe. The chaos I'd left behind was like a storm that had finally passed, but something else lingered beneath that satisfaction, something I couldn't quite place. I spent the next few hours driving around aimlessly, reflecting on what I'd just done. I'd humiliated my sister, yes, and I'd done it in front of all her guests, her friends, and family. But was it worth it? Was it worth losing that piece of our relationship, the tiny thread of connection that we'd both been hanging onto for years? I wasn't sure. All I knew was that I was tired of being treated like I didn't matter. At home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in front of the TV. The news played in the background, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking back to Amanda's face when she realized what I'd done. The shock, the fear, the vulnerability. It was everything I'd hoped for, but in some twisted way, it didn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. I had gotten revenge, but at what cost? Around midnight, my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up, expecting some call or text from a friend or maybe one of the other guests at the wedding. But when I saw Amanda's name on the screen, my stomach did a quick flip. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Carol, She paused, and I could almost hear the weight of her words, like she was struggling to get them out. "I don't know what to say. You really went too far." I leaned back in my chair, taking a long sip of wine. I'd been waiting for this, and yet hearing it made me uneasy. "You didn't think I was good enough for your wedding, Amanda. You didn't think I belonged there, so I just made sure you felt it." "I get it," she said, sounding a little calmer now. "But you humiliated me in front of everyone, Carol. God, you know I didn't mean to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you." I didn't say anything for a moment. I knew she didn't mean to hurt me, but that didn't change the way I felt in that moment, the way she'd dismissed me, the way she'd shut me out. I'd let her do that for years, let her walk all over me, making me feel small, making me feel like I didn't belong. "You know, I thought we were past this," Amanda continued, her voice cracking slightly. "But I guess I was wrong." I closed my eyes, thinking back to when we were younger, when things used to be different. Amanda had always been the star, the one everyone gravitated toward, and I'd always been in her shadow. But this wasn't just about my place in her life. This was about standing up for myself, for once. "I don't want to lose you, Carol," Amanda said quietly. "You're my sister. I didn't know how to include you in this world of mine. I thought I was protecting you by keeping you out." I laughed bitterly. "Protecting me? From what? Being myself? You were never protecting me, Amanda. You were pushing me away." There was silence on the other end of the line. I could feel her trying to process what I was saying, trying to understand my side, but she wasn't ready. Not yet. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have handled this differently. You're right. I should have respected you more." "I just want to be seen, Amanda," I said softly. "That's all." "I see you now," she said. "I do. and I promise I'll do better." I sat there for a long time, holding the phone in my hand. I wasn't sure if I could believe her, and honestly, I didn't know if I wanted to. The next few days were quiet. The wedding was over, but the aftermath lingered like a bad taste in my mouth. Amanda and I didn't talk much. There were a couple of awkward texts, a few hesitant phone calls, but nothing had changed. I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive her, or if she was even ready to make amends. I decided to give it time. Maybe we both needed it. A week later, I got an invitation in the mail. It was a small card with Amanda's handwriting on it. The words were simple. "Let's have coffee. Just us. No wedding talk, just sisters." I stared at the card for a long time before slipping it into my purse. I wasn't sure if I was ready to sit down with her again, to hear her apologies, or to try and fix what was broken between us. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let it sit unresolved forever. There was still a part of me that wanted to fix things, and yet a part of me wasn't sure if I could ever go back to how things were. I went to bed that night thinking about what it would mean to let go of the hurt, to let go of the need for revenge. But would I really be letting it go? Or would I just be forgiving her because I didn't want to carry the weight of it anymore? I wasn't sure. But I knew one thing for certain. No matter what happened next, I had finally stood up for myself. And that, at least, was something worth holding on to. The morning of our coffee meetup, I couldn't help but feel nervous. Not because I was afraid of what Amanda might say or what I might have to hear, but because I knew this meeting could go one of two ways. Either she would apologize for everything, genuinely, deeply, or it would just be another empty conversation where she tried to brush everything under the rug and act like nothing had ever happened. The thing was, I didn't know what I wanted. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to walk away from all the resentment and start fresh. The other part of me wanted to stay mad, to hold on to the anger that had been simmering for so long. It felt easier that way, like staying in my own corner of the world where no one could hurt me anymore. I drove to the little cafe we'd always gone to when we were kids, a small place tucked between a bakery and a florist shop, where the owner knew us by name and always asked about our mom. As I parked, I saw Amanda sitting by the window, looking almost fragile. Her shoulders were slumped, and her eyes were downcast, like she was waiting for the storm to hit. The woman who had been so full of confidence only days ago now seemed smaller, unsure of herself. I took a deep breath and walked inside, the bell above the door chiming as I stepped in. Amanda looked up when she heard it, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence between us. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't frowning either, just waiting. "Hey," I said, taking the seat across from her. "Hey," she replied, her voice soft, like she wasn't sure where to start. She didn't look like the woman who had tried to control everything, to push me down. She looked like someone who was starting to see the weight of her actions, and it made me feel a little lighter, but also a little more uncertain. Did I want to see her this way? "I got your card," I said, letting my eyes meet hers for the first time in days. "What's this really about, Amanda? What do you want from me?" She took a deep breath, folding her hands on the table as if to steady herself. "I wanted to apologize, not just for the wedding, but for everything." She hesitated. "For how I've treated you, for all these years." Her words hit me like a wave, unexpected and powerful, and I couldn't quite figure out how to process them. There was a sincerity there, something I hadn't heard in her voice before. The sharpness, the arrogance, it was gone. In its place was something I hadn't seen in years: vulnerability. "I've been so focused on my own life," she continued, eyes welling up, "on what I thought was the right way to live, the right way to be, and I completely overlooked you. I never realized how much that must have hurt." I looked down at my coffee, trying to think of the right words to say. The last few days had given me time to reflect, and as angry as I'd been, I wasn't blind to the fact that Amanda had her own struggles. That didn't mean I was ready to forgive her right now, but it didn't mean I couldn't hear her either. "I don't know what to say, Amanda. I replied, my voice soft. I've spent so long feeling invisible to you, feeling like I didn't matter, that it's hard to know how to move forward from here. I've been holding on to so much anger, and I don't even know if I want to let it go yet. Her face crumpled a little, like she wasn't prepared for that response. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. For the first time, it felt like I had the upper hand in the conversation, like I wasn't the one trying to earn her approval anymore. I didn't mean for you to feel that way, she said after a long pause. And I get that you need time. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away, but I just want you to know I'm trying. I don't want to lose you. I let the words hang there between us, and for a long moment, all I could do was stare at her. I hadn't expected her to be this raw, this real. Maybe I had spent so many years holding on to the bitterness that I hadn't stopped to consider that Amanda, too, had been carrying her own weight. I don't want to lose you either, I said quietly. But I need to know this isn't just some temporary thing. I need to know this isn't going to be another cycle where I forgive you, and then we go right back to how things were before. I get that, Amanda said, nodding slowly. And I can't promise it will be easy, but I can promise that I will try. I'm not the person I used to be. It was a simple promise, and maybe it wasn't enough, but it was a start. And that was all we had right now. The rest of the conversation was quieter. We talked about everything and nothing. The awkwardness that had once defined our interactions was still there, but now it felt different. Less of a wall between us, and more of a reminder that things couldn't go back to how they had been. Not immediately, anyway. By the time we finished our coffee, the air between us had shifted. There was still tension, but it felt like it was more the tension of a beginning rather than an ending. I guess I'll see you at Mom's next Sunday then? Amanda asked as we stood up to leave. Yeah, I said, giving her a small smile. I'll be there. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but it wasn't the kind of relief I'd imagined. It wasn't a clean slate, and it wasn't an instant fix. It was the beginning of something new, something uncertain, and maybe that was better than any closure I could have gotten. The days following my coffee date with Amanda were like walking on a tightrope, still unsure of my footing, but not quite falling either. We exchanged a few texts here and there, each one more awkward than the last, as we tiptoed around the things that had once defined our relationship. But there was something different now. There was no longer an unspoken expectation that I would always be the one to carry the burden of peace between us. We were both learning how to be present, even if we didn't know how to fix everything yet. A week later, Sunday came, and I found myself at Mom's house. It had always been a place of refuge, a constant in the chaos of life, but today it felt heavier. Amanda had already arrived when I got there, her car parked in the driveway, and I could feel the familiar pulse of nerves tightening my chest. I wasn't sure what to expect, but part of me knew that this visit, this time together, had the potential to be the turning point for both of us. When I stepped into the house, the smell of Mom's cooking instantly hit me. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, the whole spread she always made when she wanted to spoil us. But despite the warm, homey atmosphere, the tension was thick. Mom smiled when she saw me, but even she seemed to be walking on eggshells. "Carol, you made it! Just in time for dinner," Mom said, her voice bright, as if she hadn't noticed the small cloud hanging over us. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, trying to match her energy, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something important was about to happen. Amanda was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through a magazine, her eyes flicking up when I walked in. There was a hesitation between us, something unspoken, but we both knew what had to be said. "Hey," I said, standing in the doorway for a moment. "How have you been?" She looked at me, biting her lip as if choosing her words carefully. "Okay, trying to get everything sorted out." I nodded, not sure what else to say. The air felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for us to acknowledge the elephant in the room. "Carol, Amanda, dinner's ready," Mom called, breaking the silence, and we both stood, moving into the dining room in sync. It was almost like we were playing pretend again, trying to act like things were fine when they were anything but. We sat down at the table, and for the next hour, the conversation was mostly light. Mom asked about my work, about what Amanda had been up to with her new job, about trivial things that no one really cared about, but that we had to talk about to avoid the real conversation. After dessert, when the dishes were cleared and the coffee was poured, Amanda broke the silence. "I know we've been avoiding the real conversation," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "But we can't keep pretending nothing happened. Carol, I need you to know, I want us to have a real relationship again. Not just surface level, not just for show." I stared at her, waiting for the sting of what she might say next. There was a heaviness in her words, but there was something in her eyes, too. A glimmer of hope. It was almost like she was giving me a choice. We could go back to what we had, but only if I was willing to try, too. "I know I messed up," she continued. "I know I hurt you, and I can't take that back. But I can be better. I can do better. And if you'll let me, I want to prove that." The thing was, I wasn't sure I could ever truly forget the years of being pushed aside, the years of feeling like I wasn't enough. But I also knew that holding on to that bitterness was like holding on to a stone in my hand, letting it wear me down, over time. I met her gaze, letting the silence hang for a moment longer before I spoke. "I'm not saying it's going to be easy, Amanda. I'm not going to just forgive you because you say the words. But I can try. I can start by trusting you, at least a little bit." Amanda's eyes softened and she nodded. "I understand. I'm just asking for the chance." That was all she needed to say. I could feel the weight lifting just a little, the heavy fog between us starting to part. It wasn't fixed, not by any means, but it was something I could hold on to. Mom sat back in her chair, her eyes darting between the two of us. She didn't say anything, but I knew she was relieved to see us talking again, after everything that had happened. It had been a long time since we'd had an honest conversation, since we'd acknowledged what had gone wrong. And as we finished our coffee, there was no more pretense between us. We weren't all the way there, but we were starting to build something new. Something I wasn't sure would last, but something I could hold on to for now. I left Mom's house that afternoon with a strange sense of peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because we had taken the first step. A new beginning, of sorts. It was a slow burn, I knew. There would be more moments of tension, of uncertainty. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't fighting for a place in her world. She was fighting for a place in mine, and that, somehow, felt more than enough. As I pulled into my driveway that evening, I received a message on my phone. Amanda had texted me, "Thank you for listening. I know it's not easy, but I'm grateful." I sat there for a moment, looking at the words. The smile I gave back was genuine, if not entirely without hesitation. Maybe things could be different after all.